Hello again, Euphorians. It is I, Nick, and it is day 3 of the 31-day horror movie bonanza, or whatever you call it. Yesterday was a little disappointment. That's fine. Today was a fucking blast. It was amazing. I was so happy. I was like, oh, curtains was washed away from my brain, and I was lifted on high, and ooh, it felt good. So today, I've had this for quite a while. I found it at a thrift store, actually, but I think it was like a former Blockbuster rental or something. But I've had this for almost 4 years and never watched it. This is Rudy Ray Moore in Petey Wheatstraw, the Devil's Son-in-Law. Yes, this is. And as far as how well the cover goes with the movie, this is it. This is they represent it pretty well. There's Rudy Ray as Petey Wheatstraw. There's the devil. He doesn't really look like that, but that's okay. These are pretty much all the characters. Jimmy, Petey's friend, and this is Leroy and Skillet, our antagonists for the film. It's actually, God, I love this movie. I was just so happy because it's so funny and it's okay. So people, I'm sure there's a good debate in here that it's not exactly a horror film, but it has to do with the devil. There are demons in it, and it might not be particularly scary, but the idea of kind of making a deal with the devil, that's a horror element, so just bear with me, okay? It's a great movie. I think I've seen almost all of Rudy Ray Moore's earlier movies. The first movie I saw was, I just bought on a whim, his film Disco Godfather, from Vinegar Syndrome, and they did a great job. The restoration looks fantastic, and I absolutely fell in love with it. A lot of people, I think, were kind of down on Disco Godfather because it didn't really have it wasn't as racy, and he didn't really swear as much, and there wasn't as much nudity or sex talk in general. And so a lot of people didn't like it. I absolutely loved it. There's disco in it. There's bad dancing. There's a lot of bad kung fu, which this is definitely chock full of. And Rudy Ray Moore is just so fucking entertaining. He's just the consummate entertainer. What was the last one I saw was the Human Tornado, and that was pretty good. Some of the stand up in it was more just kind of like spoken word stories things, and it wasn't that funny. But this, he's doing straight up stand up at the beginning of the film, and it is just so hilarious and so good. So, okay, let me get to the story. I'm trying not to make these super long because I'm doing so many of them. Anyway, so Rudy Ray Moore plays Petey Wheatstraw. He is like a famous comedian, entertainer, and he's coming to this town where these two club owners, promoters, Leroy and Skillet, they hear about this, and they're about to open their new nightclub on right around the same day Petey Wheatstraw is going to perform. And they just know everybody's going to go see Petey's show, and then no one's going to go see their huge premiere or whatever. And they borrowed a bunch of money from Mr. White, who I'm guessing is in the mob, but none of them really look like mobsters, but it's alluded to that they're kind of mobsters. And Mr. White has kind of alluded to the fact that if they aren't successful and they don't get their money back, that Leroy and Skillet are going to get fucking murdered, basically, which they don't want that to happen. So at first they call up Petey and they're like, hey, do you think you can, wait a couple months before you do your show so we can have our thing? And Petey's not really up for that. So, I mean, sure, it seems a little rash, but they decide to threaten him, and eventually they decide to kill him. So they get Scarface Willie and his crew to go and first intimidate a guy who's putting up posters all over town for Petey's show. And instead of intimidating the guy, they end up shooting his kid brother right in the chest after the guy and his kid brother had this really emotional talk about like how the kid really wants to be a basketball star, but the guy's like, no, you got to go to school, and because that's what's important. And I was like, this is really poignant. This is really like, I like this a lot. And then right after the kid gets shot, it's, man, it's tragedy. There's so many fucking layers to this movie. It's a tragedy. It's comedy. Definitely number one comedy. There is horror in it. Okay? It's a horror movie. It's a horror movie. The set design is beautiful. It's like, everything is so wonderfully 70s. The clothes, the jumpsuits that Rudy Ray wears, everybody's outfits are just fantastic. Even like the homeless guy in it that ends up falling into a grave. And hey, okay, I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so after the boy is killed, they have a funeral for him. Petey is one of the he's holding the casket, and then Scarface Willie and his group of assholes comes by, parks outside the church, and shoots like 10 people, including Petey Wheatstraw, who the next second he's awakened by who else? The devil. It doesn't really look like this. And he basically makes a deal with Petey saying, I will let you come back. I will give you my magic walking stick. And I will allow you to take revenge on those people that kind of fucked you over. But you have to marry my daughter. And at first, Petey's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then he's like, well, let me take a look at that daughter. And so he shows him the picture. He's like, oh, hell no, I won't do it. And of course, in the end, he realizes this is going to be the only way he can, take revenge. And so he agrees to it, which is never a good idea. If you're ever in the situation where, you have to do a deal with the devil, don't. Okay, I've heard bad things. Anyway, so he makes the deal. He comes back. They do like a reverse. The devil does this reverse thing. So everyone else thinks that there was that big shootout at the church, but it actually didn't happen. So everyone who died at the funeral actually didn't die. There's a lot of suspension of belief in this movie, but if you're enjoying it up to this point, you don't really care. Anyway, so he gets his cane. He gets back at all of it. He gets back at Leroy and Skillet. Goes to their opening night and uses the powers in his cane to just basically cause havoc. He lifts this woman's wig off while she's performing, and he makes Leroy and Skillet are also like comedians too, which is okay. And he makes them say like really mean things to Mr. White, who's like sitting in the front row, and of course they're fucked now. So that part of the movie is over. And then the rest of the movie is just kind of Petey trying to get out of his deal with the devil, and with the devil constantly sending these demons after him, which are they're just guys with really fake devil horns and like capes. And so there's scene after scene of the guys like coming to where Petey is, and Petey kicking their ass, and then them running away, and then they find them again, and then finally it all ends on a rooftop. It seems like I'm watching a lot of movies that end on a rooftop lately, but I have to say, Pete Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, 100% worth the watch. I think Vinegar Syndrome has a restored version. This one looked pretty good, even though it's a few years old. I really absolutely enjoyed it. I recommend it. Go and find it. It's definitely out there. I love Rudy Ray Moore. You should too. All right, everybody. Have a great day. And remember, keep watching horror movies. I'll see you tomorrow.